Awesome.
So it's a hard one to forget.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, Stuart, are you okay if I mute you for the moment so we don't hear your background? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Sorry, a few more people coming in, Laurie. I think we're
Cool.
About 37, 38 at the moment.
All right. Awesome.
Dom's coming on from Quarf. There's a couple of Quarf.
Oh, great.
Yes.
Yeah, awesome.
Yeah.
No, that's really
Great.
good. Fabulous. Must be chilly down your way this morning because, oh my God, it's freezing here.
Yeah, it looked like it snowed actually. We opened the blinds and it was just white. Shame it was only frost, but the kids were gasping for a moment.
Oh my Lord.
I know, it looked beautiful, but yeah, but it's actually really sunny now. It's a beautiful day, but not as cold as I was assuming. So,
no,
but yeah, bit of a shocker.
I opted to not go for my run this morning. I'm going to regret that later.
Oh, well, you can go this afternoon, maybe. You get
exactly.
Yeah. The dogs always need a walk and run, so
that's
a good excuse.
Yeah. Morning, Dom.
G'day, how you going?
Good, how are you?
Good, thank you.
That's good, that's good. Good to see you, Wayne.
Oh, Laurie, how you going?
Good, good. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'll just get this chat up here so I can see what I'm
How's
doing.
your head this morning, Dom? How's your head this morning, Dom, after all those big long sessions on Tuesday?
Oh, mate. Yeah, sorry. It's been an interesting week. It's I also had another one, a 3-hour session on Monday to before those ones. So I just spent a day on Zoom on Tuesday and literally had to go for a big long walk to decompress after it. It's a good platform, but it's not good for a whole day. I'd like to just put on the record.
Absolutely.
How'd you go? Did you get into sport and rec?
Yeah, so the plans are in as a draft, seeking initial feedback, and then we'll see what happens. But they've actually approved a fitness plan for the whole Queensland fitness industry and also the team sports. So that's approved, and it's a similar format as what we're using. So we're hoping to get some good feedback and get our plans approved as soon as possible.
You can shoot it all over to Laurie and put it in New South Wales if you like.
So that's literally
sorry, what were you talking about?
The fitness people are actually talking about that, literally virtually copying the plan from Queensland and just using it interstate because it's, it should work anywhere. It's supposed to work in any fitness centre. So
that's why I like it. You do all the hard work.
It's been full on, but I'm happy. We'll absolutely share them. They're going to be published on the government website anyway, but yeah, no problem at all. Happy to share it.
Amazing.
And we actually had some people from interstate joining the sessions to contribute, which was awesome. So yeah, it worked well.
That's great. That's what I've loved over this period is we're having such a mix of people joining various things. I think it's awesome. It just shows what a great industry it is, really.
Yeah, the collaboration, you can't beat it once we all get on the same page and get moving. It's nice to see.
Exactly. So let's see who we've got in. We've got still about another 20 or so to come in. So I might leave it another minute. As people struggle getting out of bed on this beautiful crisp morning down the southern ends, Dom.
We thought it was cold because it got to 9 degrees up here.
9, right. It was 2 at my house this morning.
Okay.
And I'd hate to think what it was like at David's this morning.
I've booked a weekend out at Stanthorpe, which for us is a cold. Like it was -3 there yesterday.
Wow.
So my wife and I are going out there for a weekend next weekend. So I will actually be in something that resembles coldness for once. So that'll be nice. Yeah.
I think David will disagree with you there.
Like there's the snow out there, Dom.
Yeah, I don't know if they've had snow at Armidale. I don't know about at Stanthorpe yet, not this year. They have in the past, but it's literally, you know, for a few hours and then it disappears. We don't sort of get the real serious stuff that you guys sometimes get.
Cool. All right. Looks like we've got majority of people in now. So in the want of time and getting everyone off to do their regular duties of a Friday before a long weekend, which no doubt for all of us will be somewhat busy if you're in the destination space, but let's kick off. So welcome everyone. Thanks again for joining us on another Friday. We do have a few new people, which I've noticed on the RSVP, so welcome. Great to have you on board. This is our 6th webinar since we've started them, and obviously instigated by COVID and the need to connect the sector and just talk through some of the issues and opportunities that were there for us to take. So I'm Laurie Mode. For those that don't know me, I'm the CEO of Outdoors New South Wales and ACT, and may I recognise any traditional owners of the land of which you meet today and I meet, and may I say Warrami, which is Darug language for welcome, and pay my respects to elders past, present, future and emerging in the areas that we are today. First of all, I thought what I'd do is just talk through some of the basics about why organisations like us exist. And can I recognise Dom, who's from Outdoors Queensland, or sorry, still Corf, soon to be Outdoors Queensland, who's on the phone with us today. And I don't know if Jamie's joining us, but he's normally with us from Outdoors WA. And the important role of these associations, particularly in a time like now, is trying to ensure that you guys are given the tools and resources that you need to make your journey a bit easier going through these challenging times. So normally we would be out there advocating, normally we'd be out there marketing, doing all the events and training, but this is where we've really had to step up and really supply you guys with some much needed resources as we go through this epidemic, but also come out the other side. And we've got to make sure that whatever we're providing is going to be a sustainable entity, a sustainable sector and a sustainable business for you. So you might have heard Dom talk briefly before we started about some of the tools that he's been doing in Queensland. You may be aware that Outdoor Council of Australia has provided some much needed tools as well, which includes the framework to get us through to where we are now, and also the template which you can use to assess your own business as you come out and start activating and providing for your customers again. So there's a lot that's been going on, but I thought what I'd do is quickly give you a bit of a summary of this week in review, because I still can't believe that it's a week gone again. I get to Friday and go, where the hell did that week go? And yet again, I find myself saying the same thing. So 1st of June, we had legislation change. And if you remember, I sent an email to you all on Monday with the ruling for New South Wales and ACT. A few little surprises in there that we probably didn't expect. And what that said was that not only are we allowed to operate again, but there's certain things like COVID safe plans which are required to be had on site. So with the work that Dom was just talking about, I think Outdoors New South Wales and ACT will be working with you to help guide you in that area in the next week. National parks are open, and the big change there, and also in forestry, is that if you want to go to a campground, you have to book. So this is certainly going to be a challenge for a lot of the campgrounds that you haven't been able to book in the past, and the agencies involved in that and getting them to a bookable state. So they're a little bit busy at the moment. I don't know, has Kyle come on board? He's probably in amongst all of that at the moment. I can't see him there, but if he jumps online, we might ask how he's faring with that. Another great progress we made this week was talking to Forestry Corp and engaging with them on the opportunities that forestry provide our sector. We've established a great relationship there, and Louise will actually probably join us in a future forum to talk about how to work with them in their forests. They are really keen on getting some more activity permits into the space. So if you've got an interested forest that you wanted to pursue, certainly I'll be sending links around as part of the newsletter next week to help guide you in that area. Webinars and past forums. We've obviously been putting all of the past forums and the AAAS webinar, which we held with Liz Horn the other day, all up on the website. They're also on our YouTube channel. So if you missed any of them, please feel free to jump on and catch up. A reminder about the ABAT Symposium. I don't know if anyone was able to attend this week's first session. Unfortunately, I couldn't, but if anyone has any feedback on that, love to be able to hear how it went, because now there's another, I think, 6 or so sessions as part of the ABAT Symposium. So if you haven't registered, make sure you do, because it certainly sounds like a great program. We spoke briefly about the management plans, but keep in mind that that template is there for your use. So if you want to have a look at that first and foremost, and then as we get through next week and taking what Dom's been doing in Queensland, we'll be able to deliver you some more specific tools to do with COVID safe plans. AIS support. So in talking to the AIS this week, they certainly are very keen to get schools back into the outdoor space, which is great. Like anything in independence, they don't recommend or advise what the school should be doing, but the good part is they've now uploaded the templates that OCA have provided in the framework and the template up to the school's portal. So the schools have got access to that, which is sending a great message, which is let's get back to outdoor ed, and here's some tools that the industry have been using. The second last one there is about the referral network, and this was instigated by yourselves about some of the inquiries you're getting through. If you can't cope with them, making sure they stay within your region and within the sector. So just a reminder to send your information through on the link on the newsletter if you want to be part of that referral network, so that you can refer others and others can refer you in your local precinct and region. And the final one there is the Seek portal. So this is an initiative of OCA, and this was purely brought about by having to get so many people back into the casual and seasonal positions that the sector has. At a time where we've had no one, and having to go out and recruit for the service provision to make sure that you can deliver your activities properly. There's a second element to this Seek portal, and that is to try to get a bit more profile for the sector, to be in a space that we're not normally, and to try to build our talent pool for our sector. So this initiative is literally linking every business in the sector with whatever jobs they've got advertised at the moment onto one portal, so that the peak bodies in all the different states and OCA can promote that one link and that one portal for outdoor jobs in the sector. So if you're advertising at the moment, make sure you send Leslie your Seek ID number, not your password, not your access code, just your Seek ID number. And we will make sure that that number gets through to Seek to pull your data and pull your ads into that one portal. So I see that as a great opportunity to really build the profile of the outdoor sector. If there's any questions on any of that, shoot it through onto chat. I am conscious of time because we have 2 amazing guest speakers this morning. And the first of which we heard briefly last week, and that's Jeff, and I can see him on the screen there. Morning, Jeff.
Oh.
How are you?
Good, thanks. Great to be here.
That's good. That's good. Well, after popular demand from last week's little tidbit, people said we want more, we want more, we want more. So, Jeff, I'd be happy to share hosting, and I'm just trying to work out how to do that from here. There we go. And if you want to jump in anytime you're ready and shoot away with your screen share there, you should be able to do it now.
Excellent. Hopefully that screen's coming through for you, and we're all good to go. So thanks everyone for the opportunity to come back and share just a few more insights today. Really pleased to be able to do this. And McCrindle, we're a social research company, so we love collecting and analysing and particularly visualising the data. So I've got a coffee ready, but it's more to keep my 3 kids' energy levels up as a dad. But the stats here hopefully will be nice and visual, and we've got them in a report for you as well. So the report is available, and you can grab that at analyseaustralia.com. So I'll just share some of the key findings, which Laurie has very kindly asked me back. And hopefully you find this really helpful just as we, I guess, navigate this recovery phase that we're in. And we're really, I guess, understanding the complexity that you're managing, and really appreciate all the hard work, many different organisations pulling together here to get Aussies back into this new normal. Now, the road ahead is challenging, and yet Australians are somewhat hopeful at this point. Back in the first phase of research, when the restrictions were coming in April, we launched a bit of insight that's just looked at what's the top emotions that Aussies are feeling, and hopeful was at number 5 back then. This was as the restrictions had come in. And no surprise, in a period of uncertainty, that anxiety was one of the anxious feeling was one of the top ones, and frustration, I think, with people having to cancel plans. I was expecting to be down at Bendalong at a camping ground down there in the April school holidays, getting out with my family, and cancelled that surf trip, sadly, or family holiday, I should call it, sorry. The surf trip had to wait another day. I guess frustration, though, is probably also followed by that vulnerability, and that was not just a emotional, financial or health thing. This was a real social and global experience that all Australians were wrapped up in. And so the vulnerability leading to a bit of that fear, and yet hope was still number 5 back in the first phase. In our last bit of research, as I mentioned last week, hopeful has, I guess, risen right up to 2nd place. Anxious is still top. So we are still in some uncertain times. I think this research was done in early May, so the 8th to the 14th, I think, is the dates of fieldwork was collected. And so here we are, 5th of June. I wonder if that hope is rising even further with the long weekend right in front of us and people able to get out. So maybe that hope continues to rise. We did, as McCrindle, true fashion, we love the generations. And so we've cut up the insights on this next slide by the different generations. And so we've got those young Gen Zs who were feeling still quite anxious in this 2nd phase of research, as well as the Gen Ys, where you can see the baby boomers and the builders are looking more hopeful. So interesting that whilst they might be more affected potentially and more vulnerable to a health pandemic than some of the younger generations, there is that probably a little bit more of resilience in our older generations who maybe have been through a GFC, seen some of those economic hard times raised by some of those people who've been through that Great Depression 100 years ago, and so today able to stand a little bit more confidently than some of the younger generations. Now, we, I think, are very interested to know what the impact of COVID has been, though, on people. And so we asked the question, well, what area of your life have you felt has been had the biggest negative effect, the negative impact from COVID? And top of the list was social, and we've really missed seeing our loved ones, our family, our friends, with cost of living, cost of housing in Sydney, where 5.4 million Sydney side as well. We do have generations spread across not just the state, not just the country, but we do have in Australia 3 in 10 Australians who were born overseas. So that loss of connection in the social is a key thing. We also know that 1 in 4 Aussies can't survive the day without coffee. Now, that stat's not in this report, but that's a key stat I bring in just about every presentation, because we love gathering, we love having a drink together, whether it's the hot beverage or a cold beverage on the end of a Friday. The point is, as the Australian spirit, we do really band together, and we've seen that on my local area has got buses that have got it printed across the front of their buses at the moment, that we're in this together. It's a key message that even though with social isolation, we've really missed that connection, and we do really value that. Now, the second area of negative impact was on the finances for Australians, with reduced income, loss of income completely. This health pandemic quickly became an economic crisis, and the government did step in, and we've got JobKeeper, homemaker payments now also coming through, trying to keep our construction industry afloat over these last few days. And so the household impact, though, is quite substantial, where Australians really have, I guess, looked at this opportunity as a chance to say, where can we cut expenses? We need to make some savings here, because loss of income, with people already loaded up with debt, has put quite a lot of pressure on households. Now, the third area is into their mental well-being, and over this period of self-isolation, increased anxiety, there is a a serious concern around Australians and our mental well-being. And this is not just something that will pass as we recover over these next weeks and months. We do need to continue to look after Australians, not just the physical health in a pandemic, but that mental well-being, because we're all connected to people who've been impacted on that employment front, as well as, sadly in Australia, we've had over 100 deaths. And so that traumatic experience as well due to COVID is something to be concerned about. And finally, the area of impact was physical health. So actually, people are fearful for their health and getting less exercise or sleep because of these times that we live in. Now, some people might say that the isolation hasn't gotten to them much. We saw this meme and thought it's summed it up nicely, where someone said, isolation hasn't gotten to me too much, but then they're out there reading a story to their plants. And so I think it's probably a few people who've been to the local nurseries and got a few extra plants, building that green thumb at the moment, but hopefully not going too far like this person is with reading them stories, although it may help them grow, who knows. Now, one of the interesting things, we talked about that negative impact. We also looked at that question by generation. And so on this side, you can see that for the older generations, that social impact is highest for our boomers and even higher again for our builders, those 75 plus. So being in isolation for those older Australians has been incredibly difficult and something we need to keep in mind. The financial impact, though, is most keenly felt for the younger generations, particularly the Gen Ys, so the 26 to 40-year-olds. So just something to be conscious of as we are on this road to recovery. Who's missed the social interaction the most, as well as who's felt the impact negatively from the financial component. So some quite interesting findings there. Now, you might be like me and have seen some good in this. I'm a pretty positive and upbeat person at most times. I've had a few low moments though over these last few months, but we've asked a question in this survey around, well, what have you actually, what lessons have you learned from this experience, and what would you love to keep continuing in your life? That once this recovery is over, what do you want to stay? Now, top of the list is spending more time with family, household members. So that kind of key connection, that social aspect, but it's really about being with those loved ones. Secondly was the slower pace of life. I mentioned this last week. I think there's an interesting connection here. And those first two, it's really about having more time at a slower pace with our loved ones. Thirdly is that financial saving. So people are looking at this period, I guess, for ways where they can build that little bit of extra buffer in their savings account, or maybe it's knocking down a little bit of debt to create some more future opportunity for spend. It's quite interesting that that's only third. But a lot of those hobbies there, cooking and baking, come into the list. We've got the board games and the reading, spending time with pets, and then 1 in 3 Australians is saying that they want to spend more time in nature, as well as getting out and doing that new exercise routine at home as well. So people who've been active, probably really missing what they normally would do. Now, I think that pace of life just really ties in nicely with what a lot of you are working hard to do, to get people into the outdoors, to get those connections across the great land of New South Wales and beyond across Australia, getting out of those homes that we've been stuck in and for safety reasons stuck in. But I think there's a great opportunity for people to find that slower pace of life. While we can't go to those huge events in the cities, we've got an opportunity at this point to engage in our communities. And again, just to see those results cut by the generations, you can see here, we've got the older generation, again, keen to keep that slower pace of life, whereas, might not be a surprise, but those younger generations putting financial savings as one of those key elements that they need to keep doing now these restrictions are lifting and we're moving into the recovery. Now, I just thought it'd be interesting, maybe more as a personal note, to share what have been the benefits and challenges of working from home. We won't spend too long on this, but just the top of the list is the time saving. What's the best thing about working from home? It's time saving, and then it's the money saved from reduced travel costs. So quite interesting there. And in terms of the, I guess, the challenges that people have found while they're working from home, and I think these are helpful to keep in mind as you build out those messaging components in marketing campaigns, as we do communicate the advantages of getting out. Top of the list of challenges is that social isolation and also that blurring of work and home boundaries, where people have all of a sudden had that room or that kitchen table, it's the family meal place one part of the day, next thing it's the boardroom meeting, it's the unusual blurring of spaces and that mental, I guess, blurring is a challenge as well in that time. Now, last little part of my session with you this morning is just to look at, well, when it comes to the road to recovery, maybe we kind of have this sort of an attitude when it comes to thinking about 2020. We think, well, actually, can we just get on to 2021? That will be our year. Let's maybe just draw a line through 2020. But here we are, we've still got at least 6 months to go. So what are people expecting to get out and get into in the last 6 months of this year? Well, we asked the question, how long do you think it will take to see recovery in following areas? And I've got about 5 different areas here just to go through. So when it comes to eating out at cafes and restaurants, 35% are happy to get out in the next few months and do that. 27% said they'll wait until the end of 2020. Now, in the report on page 17, you can find the rest of the percentages for these, but that gives you a bit of an indication. There's early adopters who are just ready to get out and get into eating out again. When it comes to attending social gatherings, again, quite similar results. 32% are ready over these next few months to start getting out. In terms of the local community, still a bit of reservation for people who want to get out into that local community. Some who are even preferring to wait until next year, which was quite a surprise. I think there is still quite a bit of concern in our community where people are not feeling like this pandemic is over. The numbers might be low on our daily new cases, but people aren't quite prepared to take those risks at this point. When it comes to their personal finances, we've got a portion there who 22% think they'll be recovered by the end of 2020, which is pretty encouraging that 1 in 5 households think they'll be back on their feet, whereas there's more realistic expectation, or not more realistic, that people who are going to take a little bit longer to recover from the impacts of these really challenging times. So people looking into the years ahead even for that. And not just at a personal level, we also thought, what do Aussies think about our nation recovering economically? And as you can see, 2 in 5, 39% thinking this is going to be a years-long journey, if not decades of recovery. Generations ahead will be continuing to help us rebound. Now, probably a positive thing I mentioned last week is that 92% of Aussies think our leaders have done a good job in enforcing those restrictions to flatten the curve and think it was worthwhile. So 92% of Australians said, yes, that was a good decision, flatten the curve. We've all kind of been in self-isolation together. We've come through it and a real united approach, I think, in that moment. And now as we recover, as we come on this new journey, it's almost like a road trip coming out of a bit of self-isolation. My final 3 tips would be that we need to interact with understanding as we move forwards, as we begin to plan those getaways for Aussies who are unable to travel internationally. We need to understand that they're experiencing some of those concerns and fears still, while they might also be impacted by some of those financial pressures, having lost income, lost work. We need to also consider those lessons of what do people want to keep? That slower pace of life, that time with loved ones, as well as time getting outdoors, I think are some of the key messages I would reinforce today. And also just a reminder that we do really have a united spirit in Australia here. While we do have great cultural diversity, generational diversity, even the hobbies we love are very different. And yet, what an opportunity over these coming months to begin to pull together as a nation and also provide opportunities for people to spend time with their loved ones. So I hope that's been helpful for you. Thanks for the chance to come and share. You can grab that report at analyseaustralia.com. If you've got any questions, I'm always happy to take any, but if there's any follow-up ideas you want to discuss around how do we understand what Aussies think as we move through these next phases, always happy to chat. We'll explore doing this research when that sort of 3rd phase of maybe the new normal has landed. We'll look at doing another round of surveys on that era as well. So thanks so much for your time today.
Brilliant. Thanks, Jeff. Thanks so much. Just a question for you, Jeff. Knowing as much as you do about our sector, obviously mainly from myself, how do you think the sector should react to this information, and what's your advice? Obviously, it seems to match exactly what we provide as a sector and what people are looking for as they come out of this. What sort of advice could you give some of the operators that are in this space now in taking hold of some of the content that you've just shared with us?
Yeah, I think the Australian, we use often 5 words to describe the emerging generations, and we use the phrases that they're global, that they're mobile, that they're social, that they're visual, that they're digital. And yet, I think having spent 3 months with 3 young kids from a personal experience, a lot of screen time, is the opportunity to get out in the outdoors something that parents and families want at this point? I think the weather is probably the biggest challenge at the moment as we approach winter, but getting kids off screens, and whilst screens are a new normal for our emerging generations, we don't think that will ever disappear. Giving young people and their families that break from what's probably been a bit of Zoom fatigue. I'm conscious we're in Zoom right now. I hope Zoom isn't listening, but giving people that opportunity to have that slow pace of life with their loved ones, I think is the key thing. Now, that could be the day trips, getting out to great little regional activities and cultural experiences that are going to be well catered for from a safety, well priced for people who might be experiencing some challenge. So probably just making sure that there's a good understanding of those impacts on the individuals and their households, and drawing on those kind of contextual challenges. I'm not sure about each of you, but having had a bit of Zoom fatigue, and we've, I guess, really relished those face-to-face interactions with people over these last few weeks. And so how do you create environments for sustained, safe, and simple lives, I guess, at this point? Now, in 2019, one of the trends for the year Mark McCrindle, our research principal here, identified was that simplicity as a service would become a trend. People's lives are becoming busier, more complex. And so to offer simplicity, I think the messaging around Blue Mountains, where I love to get out, and was out there on Saturday doing a little trail run, and it's come and feel small again. That language, I think, is really beautiful for people who are probably experiencing that stress of a fast-paced life. Now, we're in an unusually slow-paced life, and so how do you reposition that messaging to tie into those the challenges they're facing and also their desires?
Yeah, great. Thank you. And for those that are on the line that do have something that they offer the family market, I urge you to send through to Leslie and myself what you're doing in that, because as we sort of come out of this, we want to start ensuring that our media releases are reflecting some of these opportunities that match this research. So we'd love to use our members' content, obviously, and drive that visitation to yourself as people are exiting Sydney tonight, and I think the last person out needs to turn off the lights, because I don't think there's anyone going to be here tomorrow. But if you could just send through your content on anything that you provide, particularly that family market, I think that's a really great start. Obviously, we encourage you to do all of your products so we're understanding what you're doing, but I think that's a really good learning. Thank you, Jeff. Is there anyone that wanted to ask a question? I haven't seen anything in the chat except Dom's compliments to you, Jeff, and love the message about it's not just about adrenaline-fueled activities, which you're dead right. So if anyone wants to ask anything, I'll give you a couple of seconds to jump in. No? Everyone's asleep or satisfied? Not too sure which. Okay, great. All right, fabulous. Thank you so much, Jeff. Really, really appreciate you attending again and satisfying our craving for research, or mine anyway. Okay. Now, thanks, Jeff. The second topic that we put on the agenda today goes to what I've been saying to a lot of you during the week, the last couple of weeks, about as you come out of this, what do you need to consider? And we always talked about the legislation is your first point of call. What does the legislation allow you to do? What doesn't allow you to do? And then the second point of call is, right, what does your insurance cover you for? And having a relationship with your insurer has been emphasised to me this week, so important. And I've actually asked Paul and also Greg to come on from Affinity Research, Affinity Insurance, talking about Jeff as research, not insurance, from insurance. And I just wanted them to chat to you about some of the things that we chatted during the week on, because it emphasises some of the things that you need to consider as you come out and get active with your customers again. So Paul, I might hand it across to you first. Thank you again for joining us today.
Oh, thank you, Laura, for having us, and it's great to see this sort of networking taking place. It's quite refreshing, and I know it's been taking place over the years, but I think this is really highlighting the importance of it, and also making it a lot easier for some to not necessarily leave their space, but to still be connecting with others. So, well done for doing it. I was actually really interested listening to Jeff's presentation and looking at it, and a few points that really sort of do connect the dots to the insurance question is, yep, this started out as a health crisis. It very quickly moved to an economic crisis. I did laugh because I know which of the research categories I'm in, and I noted that I'm supposed to say I'm enjoying this slower pace of life. From our perspective, and in view of the idea of connecting with your broker in relation to your insurances, and I'll get Greg to speak in just a moment. He heads up our liability facility and works very closely with the outdoors industry. Is that our crew have never been busier, and you know, Laurie asked me the question during the week as to, you know, are we getting much? How much connectivity are we having with our clients and their likes? And we are literally connecting with a couple of thousand of our clients very closely at the moment, because we do insure a lot of people in this space, and it has really affected you know, a good 90 to 95% of our liability clients. And I guess in a way, what COVID-19 has done is highlighted a lot of things, but it's very much been a distraction to a lot of the real issues that are facing the outdoor and adventure industries. The availability of public liability insurance is actually becoming a really serious issue, and it's getting back to you know, the 2002 and the collapse of HIH type environments. So it is really important that you keep connecting with your brokers and making sure that information is being related back to your insurers. And at the end of the day, insurance is actually about peace of mind. It's about reassuring yourself. And I think some of us, especially those of us who are over 21, do remember the days where insurance was actually about, if I make a mistake, if I do something wrong that impacts somebody else, that I'm going to be able to provide for them. I'm going to be able to compensate for that mistake. Very quickly, insurance has recently more become about a part of an overall risk management strategy, but often is still left as a bit of a buck passing operation that, oh, well, it's okay, I'm insured, I can let it go. And that attitude has actually affected you know, the outdoor sector, the adventure sector, quite significantly. I think, as far as I'm concerned, it is important that you do be able to connect and know. And what we were talking about with Laurie was that many people don't actually know enough about insurance to feel comfortable asking questions. In the outdoor space, you know, we have a lot of clients come, and we're used to people being nervous. We're used to people being outside of their comfort zone. So we can relax them. We can you know, make them connect, and we can assist them in asking the questions. We can help them explore. In the insurance space, that's actually been quite difficult to do with people, although we're seeing a really dramatic turnaround in that probably in the last 12 to 24 months. But overall, you know, insurance really needs to become one of your business partners. It needs to be a very significant part of your business planning, and certainly a significant part of your risk management planning in what's going on. And you know, coming out of COVID is one thing. There's a whole lot of other risk, you know, that needs to be identified and mitigation strategies put into place, because people have not been getting necessarily away and outdoors, and so we're now looking at them stepping back. So what are the other risks that are going to be associated with that? Are we going to get a whole lot of new people that are interested in getting outside, etc., etc.? I'm going to pass it over to Greg at this point in time just to talk a little bit about, I guess, what's happening from the insurer's perspective, and making sure that that you do ask the right questions. Be very careful of what, for example, in relation to COVID, what exclusions are being placed by insurers, and they've been very quick to place exclusions in this area as to the impact. So it is going to be an interesting comeback to normal life, but I'll let just Greg explore some of the other things that are going on at this point in time.
Great. Thanks so much, Paul.
Thanks, Paul. Just worked out how to get the mute off. So, Greg Charlotte, I look after the equine and leisure facilities area with Affinity. Been doing that for a few years now. We're seeing a lot of changes in the market. One of the words that we're hearing at the moment is it's a hard market. Now, a hard market is a time when capital is reducing for the insurers and the availability of insurance is decreasing. Now, there are quite a few factors that go into insurance. A lot of people think it's just insurers get premium and pay out claims. Unfortunately, it is a little bit more of a complicated situation. I just want to give you guys a bit of a background on how these things work and how this is then driving the factors and the things that are affecting you in your businesses. So when an insurer gets a premium, of course, there's going to be a portion that goes to the brokers and that are involved. There's a portion that will then be marked up and applied to GST, stamp duty. So we've got those factors there. Then what the insurer does with specifically liability insurance, which is one of the biggest concerns for us in running activities in the outdoor space where there are physical risks involved, is they go and reinvest those premiums in bonds, in the share market. So they're actually able to get an additional return on the money that you have paid in premiums. I remember speaking to an underwriter a year or two ago, and they said that 20 years ago, they could get $1 million in premium, pay $1.1 million in claims, and still turn a profit. Now, with the economic situation we're in, if they could get $1 million in premium and pay $700,000 in claims, they'd be just breaking even. So there are a lot of different factors going on now, not just with the claims. In, I think it was 2018, 2019, Lloyd's of London, which provides a lot of security in this space for the outdoor industry, performed what they called their decile 10 analysis. They looked at the worst 10% of business because Lloyd's had suffered some of its large underwriting losses as an entire syndicate or group of syndicates, and as such, they needed to work out how to make things profitable again. This has happened over a number of market segments, not just the equine and the outdoor industry, but they're really focused on making sure that they can make money to ensure that they're sustainable in the long term. We talk about climate. My background initially was biology and environmental science. So sustainability is a really big thing for me, and I never thought I'd hear it applied to other areas. The insurers don't go to work to lose money, just like you and I don't when we go in and run activities. So as a result, the insurers have seen that there have been a number of increasing factors in these spaces relating to the claims, the investment returns that are now leading to them not making money in these sectors. So there has been a correction. So there's a couple of different ways that insurers do this. The easy one for them is to pull out. And we've seen a number of markets pull out. In the equine space specifically, I know there's a few horse riding operators here as well. 5 markets have pulled out in the last 18 months, which is actually very, very scary and very concerning. We're seeing tightening of underwriting guidelines. So risks that would have been insured previously, we're seeing this around inflatables, your bubble soccer risks, things like that aren't necessarily the core risks of the outdoor industry, and now there's a lot more pressure on those, and insurers are backing out of those. And then on the risks that the insurers are comfortable with and are willing to write, we are seeing increases in premiums in these areas. There does really need to be, and we've seen it, a realigning of expectations in regards to the prices that people are paying in the amount of work and investment that people need to put in and work with their brokers in the submissions that they're providing. Insurers are now asking a lot more questions when you come to get insurance. They're wanting to see your operations manuals, your staff training, your induction checklists, if you're running ropes courses or things that require engineering. If you've got bridges on your property, they're wanting to see the actual engineering reports, including the engineer's professional indemnity insurance. They're really picking apart these risks to get a really good understanding of how you guys operate and run your businesses, to see if they want to bring you into the family and provide you cover. Because the insurers have also obligation to the existing clients that they have in their portfolios. They want to make sure that they're sustainable and don't want to put their existing clients at risk. And when the market toughens like this, we definitely see them tighten things up. And they're looking at the intangibles now. What are people's attitudes to risk? When they're given a recommendation, do they jump in and do it straight away? Or do they shop around for a few weeks and then come back again, realising that they can't find anything else? We're now seeing, because we deal directly with clients like yourselves, but we also deal through a broken network, and a number of different brokers around the country come and seek cover through us as well. We're seeing sometimes up to the same risk coming across our desk 4 or 5 times. One of the things that the insurer has raised is that over a number of years, certain businesses, and there have been a number through these markets, have been provided risk recommendations and things that they need to do to improve their businesses. We have seen, and which is very disappointing, a number of businesses choose not to take these because they were recommendations. And as such, when they come back around 2 or 3 years later, the first questions the insurer asks is, have they done these things? Now, when these questions are asked, they're not done to be punitive. They're done because these are the standards and the expectations of the industry. And I think there's a lot of you in here that really make that effort, make that commitment to running the best quality business you have, and the insurers do recognise and commit to that. And the reason these sort of questions are now being asked is unfortunately due to claims examples. There have been a lot of incidences that have resulted in claims. And when the claims teams, the lawyers, our in-house legal counsel who does a lot of our claims management, look at these, there have been a significant number of failings in the way businesses have operated. And it has led the insurers to ask the question, the ones that are still here, the ones that have not pulled out, whether they should be working in these sectors anymore. When operations manuals have been written and staff haven't complied. When there are codes of practice, the AES, people don't comply to those things. So as an industry, and my background is in industry, working in youth camping and in the snow sports industry, it really does scare me personally where we're at the moment. And as an industry, to ensure our sustainability moving forward, we really need to band together and pick up the torch and really improve the standard. And it's not just for us to continue in business in this space, it's also for the participants. Because I know in some of these claims instances occur, some people are never going to go back to the outdoors because of the experiences that they have. And for me, that really is sad and really is scary. But the thing is, there is a way out, and it's ensuring that we reach those standards. And Dom's put a great question forward. Insurers interested in whether outdoor providers have chosen to follow adventure activity standards and good practice guides. If so, would an insurer be more likely to provide cover or provide at a lower premium? And the answer is 100% yes. We've had cases where clients have come to us and said, we want to do this. And we've referred and with the insurers straight back to the AAS, and we've asked the client, so the AAS says this, you're doing this. This doesn't add up. And we've had activities that have been declined to our clients as a result of them not following the AAS. And the expectation is that people are of that standard, that they do follow guides, do follow codes of practice, and they're on a weekly, even daily basis now, especially we're seeing a lot more risks come across our desks as a result of the crisis that we're in. We're seeing a lot more people who don't adhere to those guides, and as a result are not getting insurance through us and through our partners with that.
And Greg, one of the things that's significant about linking the AAS is obviously in the defence of a claim, and that's certainly been done here. But I guess we need to clarify that in our particular case, we can only speak of our insurers. They're Australian-based. They have been involved in the development of the AAS. They've had input, they've had feedback, and they've been following it. We actually have compliance with the adventure activity standards as part of our underwriting guidelines. I think you need to check to see if your current insurer does that. I would doubt, in fairness, I doubt if many of or any of the London-based insurers would have those included in their underwriting guidelines, simply because they're genuinely like short-term players. They're in for 2 or 3 years, and then a new syndicate might take place. So you need to check with your broker whether that information is relevant specifically to you. But we can only speak in our case where it's actually the AAS are part of our underwriting guidelines. And look, I think having the one broker is a very good thing. It gives you information, but you need to be aware of who your insurer is over that time. And for example, the way that we've been working in this space for the past 18 years. For the past 15 years, we've had one insurer. And that same insurer is still insuring the same people they were insuring 15 years ago. So there's obviously a very different relationship between the client and the insurer if the client chooses to actually get involved and use the services that, say, a company like ours provide. There are a couple of other questions that were made there regarding things like refunds and COVID indoors versus outdoors. Again, this comes to whether the insurer is actually current with what is happening here in Australia and at the time. So indoors and outdoors issues from a risk perspective, yes, sure. The insurance industry certainly would if they were given the opportunity, would identify the risk of infection outdoors being lower than indoors. But the insurers are already on risk most times now. The insurers aren't in a position where they've had a time to actually evaluate the impact of people returning to activities indoors and outdoors. So from their perspective, many of the insurers are looking to close whatever loops they can with COVID. So you do need to be very careful, as I said earlier, as to whether or not your insurer is actually placing an exclusion on any COVID type risks. So that's one thing that you do need to check. The other question that I think Cameron asked is, whether people are talking about refunding premiums or extending the policy period. Again, you would need to check with your broker. I know that Greg's put together, we were involved with the insurer very early because they're right here. We can speak to them on a daily basis. We had basically 4 clear strategies for our clients to choose from, and our clients took advantage of 14 of those options. So as you can see, the 4 were used by a lot. There are a whole lot of other options that had to be created because everybody's circumstances have actually been quite different. You know, some operations are shutting down, yet they still have an office, they still have a property risk. Some operations have changed activities completely. There's all sorts of different things that need to be considered. So the best thing to do is to communicate. And if you're not communicating with your broker and your insurer on a regular basis, they should be a part of you know, your day-to-day business decisions. So you should be able to have that relationship. If all you're getting is an invoice, then you really need to start to think how you're referring to them, and how you work with the broker, and about asking and including them in your day-to-day decisions, because that does make a difference. I think one of the things that this whole pandemic has really given people time to think in the outdoor education and outdoor recreation and adventure space is, how am I going to start my business back up again? How am I going to run my business in this new environment? And you should really be talking to your broker in those day-to-day activities and day-to-day decisions. All of my staff, for example, me included, I've been raised camping. I've been involved professionally in the industry for 30 years. Then all of a sudden, I got involved in the insurance industry from a risk management perspective. We said, look, we need somebody who can be a link between the underwriter and reality. The staff that I've got here are all involved in those activities that we insure. Greg, he's been involved in horse riding. He loves his rock climbing, loves his surfing, been out in his kayaking. All of my staff have actually been out and participated in the activities that we insure. And we find that's a really, really important thing. We've actually taken people out of industry and trained them in insurance, because we've found that that's been the most effective way to work within our portfolio, because of the way it works. So therefore, we're not pretending to be experts in your business, and I don't think your broker will ever offer advice as to how to run your business, but they certainly can have valuable input the better they understand your business. And so if you can be relating to them, talking with them on a regular basis, communicating with them about what you're doing, the reason you're making decisions, how you're doing things, then all of those things will make a difference, with your overall premiums, with overall insurance. And I guess I just want to throw in there that in relation to premiums, don't be fooled by cheapest is best. And our industry really struggles with this. We want people to appreciate us as professionals in the outdoors. Each of you should be, consider yourself as professionals in outdoors. Your staff are really valuable resources. You actually do hold the lives of your clients in your hands. So it's really important that people recognise your professionalism. It's really important too that you recognise the professionalism that you bring to the table. Price is a factor, no doubt about it. But if it's going to be the factor, then just remember you do get what you pay for.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, guys. Is there any other questions? I noticed Ian put up one about hockey, and I didn't know, Paul, if you had an insight into that one, but he's saying that hockey are extending their rego cost to 2021, which apparently part of that includes insurance. How do they do that? Do they cover that under their own costs?
I'll speak to that.
Yeah.
So to be very clear, when a member joins an organisation, they're not paying insurance premiums. What you do is you pay your membership, and then the organisation takes out, say, what we call a group policy. So an organisation like hockey would take out their public liability and maybe a personal accident. They're not one of ours, so I don't know the specifics. However, what then they do, they have a cost recouping model, which they will allocate part of their fees towards that insurance payments. So they may choose to extend that coverage. They might cover those costs themselves. They may have negotiated with their insurers and their broker partner to either provide an extended period of cover but that would be more of an internal arrangement that they have made to provide those benefits.
Brilliant, thank you. And thanks, Greg. I've learnt more about the insurance industry this morning than I ever have. So thank you for your clear analysis on that. But just another one, Ian reminded everyone about that 10K grant. Absolutely, please, if you haven't applied for it, you've had to have had a 75% drop from 19 to 20, which, as I would say, looking around who's on, you all would qualify for that, and it can go to the cost of your insurance and any of the other facilities that you need, electricity, etc. It does close on the 30th of June, so make sure you get that grant in so you can get $10,000 in the bank with very little effort. It's a very easy application. I've gone through it myself, and yeah, it's a great opportunity, so make sure you take advantage. Is there any other...
Just very...
Yep, sorry, Ian, go for it.
Just very briefly, Orienteering New South Wales, we have received our money already from that grant. We applied and got it very quickly. And it does cover electricity, office costs, and it does cover your insurance premiums.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. And I don't know if anyone else has applied, but I think, yeah, it'll be good to see if the money has come in as quick to everyone else. Unfortunately, ACT doesn't have that opportunity. You're right, Mark. However, I noticed there is some pending grants in ACT. So as soon as they come out, I'll be putting them into the newsletters for our ACT members, which our network is growing in that state. Any other questions from anyone? This has been a great chat. I feel that it's touched on two things that we need to consider in these next couple of weeks. I think next week we'll focus highly on COVID plans, unless anyone else has any other topics that they want to bring to the table for next week's session. Great, Wayne.
Laurie,
quick response. Yep, sorry, go ahead.
Laurie, yeah, Laurie, it's Mark from Mulga Bicycle Tours.
Hey, Mark.
I've got a good. I came in at the beginning, or just after Dom was talking about what he did in Queensland last week, and I did participate in that working group where they worked on their industry-based plan.
Wonderful.
Can you explain what is going to happen here in New South Wales and
Well,
ACT?
funny you should say. I'm having a chat with Dom after this, so to work out where he got to. We're looking at taking what he did up to the national level and then filtering it out through the other states as well. So, yeah, he's been amazing in supplying what work you guys did on Tuesday to the nation to make sure the sector learns from it.
Right. So the need for an industry-based plan, that's just a Queensland initiative then, is it?
At the moment, yeah, because Queensland were the first to say that you needed a COVID safe plan. So we didn't realise, and there was no indication from any of our contacts at government level that was going to be the case in the legislation as it came out at 2 o'clock on Sunday for an implementation at midnight on the Monday. So yeah, we're playing a bit of catch up in that space, but yeah, it was great that Dom had already started working on it because he got the heads up 3 weeks earlier that they were going to be needed.
Okay, so in New South Wales, just for my own clarification, every business in New South Wales has to have it, or is it just our sector?
Every business that has public onto their premises for any activity needs to have a COVID safe plan. In our sector, I'm generalising for our sector because that's where I've concentrated my analysis of the legislation. But if you have public on your facility to do active recreation, you need a COVID safe plan. And the other thing, which is something that people need to be aware of, is keeping that content about your customers. So you're needing to keep contact numbers, names, emails for 4 weeks of anyone that participates, which I think most of us already do that. But if you don't, you certainly have to start instigating that as part of the new legislation as well.
So the other thing is how do you differentiate between a work health and safety plan and a COVID plan?
I'd love Paul's or Greg's analysis on that, because I would see that I would hope they would merge quite nicely. But Paul or Greg, do you have a perspective on that?
Yeah, the COVID is just one more risk, so you should be trying to work in the issues with COVID as part of, because your workplace health and safety plan, especially in this industry, is one that includes both your staff and your clients. So, you do need to take both into consideration, but I think it needs to become part of your overall workplace health and safety plan.
Okay, thank you.
Wonderful. Helen just was mentioning that she'd be keen to talk about anyone else offering school holiday camps or programs next week. Helen, did you want to talk to that? If you've got
I guess just to see what's out there on offer from anybody else. If anyone wants to contact me privately as well about that sort of thing, I'll just put my email address up on the chat. And if there is anybody else, perhaps we could talk about it either privately or through this group at another time.
Wonderful. And I would encourage you, if you do have a program that you want promoted, to send it through to ourselves as well. So send it through to Leslie and we'll make sure that we support you in some social media activity with that.
Oops.
You there?
Oops.
Thanks, Helen.
Yes, thank you. Sorry, I was yeah, thank you.
No worries.
Can't do two things at once.
Oh, that's right. It's all right. It's all good. So just a quick close off, because unfortunately we do have to run to time today. In saying that, Leslie, if you wouldn't mind just sticking around in case anyone else wanted to ask anything for us to take on notice, I'd really appreciate that. But a big thank you to Paul and to Greg for all their knowledge and wisdom in this space, and to Jeff, who's had to disappear, but thank you for your involvement today and for all of you to attend. Unfortunately, I've got to jump off because I've got to join a minister's call, but I will leave you all and keep you informed through the newsletter that you'll receive next week, and we'll see you next Friday. Thanks, everyone. I'll leave you to it, Leslie. I'll make you host.
Thank you. I'll hang about if there's any questions.
Great, thank you.